the cradle of one of the most enduring civilizations known to man, ancient Egypt, is closely tied to the natural bounty provided by the Nile River. The rise of this remarkable society, which lasted for thousands of years, can be traced back to the development of early settlements along the fertile banks of the Nile. This river, flanked by arid deserts, created an oasis that was not only capable of supporting human life, but also instrumental in the growth of agriculture, trade, and ultimately a centralized state. As communities formed around these early settlements, they laid the groundwork for what would become one of history's greatest civilizations. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt by King Narmer marked a transformative moment in this evolution. His reign brought together disparate tribes and settlements into a singular kingdom, ensuring the continuity of cultural, political, and social development that would define ancient Egypt for centuries. This unified nation saw the establishment of its first dynasties, leading to the rise of pharaohs whose legacies continue to captivate our imagination today. The Nile River served as a lifeblood for the early inhabitants of Egypt, who relied on its annual inundation to flood the surrounding plains and deposit nutrient-rich silt that was essential for agriculture. Before the advent of formal civilization, wandering tribes and small familial groups settled along its banks, practicing primitive forms of farming, fishing, and hunting. Archaeological evidence suggests that these early communities, often referred to as Neolithic societies, began to establish structured settlements as early as 5000 BC. They cultivated crops such as emmer wheat, barley and flax, efficiently harnessing the Nile's annual flooding for irrigation. Over time, these agricultural practices fostered a sense of permanence. People began to build permanent homes, cultivate land, and accumulate surplus food. As communities grew larger, the need for organization became apparent. Social structures emerged, leading to specialization of labor, with individuals taking on roles as artisans, traders, or leaders. Early forms of governance began to take shape, with chiefs likely emerging to maintain order within these burgeoning communities. The interdependence of these societies along the Nile facilitated trade not only among themselves, but also with neighbouring regions, particularly in the exchange of goods, like pottery, textiles, and agricultural products. This early complex web of trade networks allowed for the transfer of ideas, cultures, and innovations, ultimately paving the way for the rise of cities and the birth of a civilization. This period of transformation would set the stage for future developments that would culminate in one of the most extraordinary cultures in history. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt circa 3100 BC is widely regarded as a pivotal moment in the formation of ancient Egypt. This major political event is attributed to King Narmer, also known as Menes, who is celebrated as the first pharaoh of a unified Egypt. Historical records, such as the Narmer Palette, depicts Narmer's triumph over his rivals, signifying his conquest of Lower Egypt and the establishment of a singular monarchy. This unification was not merely a political act. It heralded the dawn of a new cultural identity that would bind diverse populations under a common governance structure. Narmer's reign and the establishment of a centralized authority marked a transformation from a fragmented society of competing tribes to an organized state with a cohesive political system. The ramifications of this unification were profound. It facilitated the development of a centralized bureaucracy capable of managing resources, conducting trade, and implementing taxes, which resolved many of the logistical challenges faced by previously divided settlements. The unification also allowed for the consolidation of religious practices, as the worship of the Nile and its life-giving properties became synonymous with the divine right of the pharaoh. Narmer's reign, according to ancient Egyptian tradition, underscores the belief in the necessity of a strong ruler who was considered both a political leader and a divine intermediary between the gods and the people. This blend of governance and spirituality would become a hallmark of ancient Egyptian culture, reinforcing the centralized rule that Narmer established. Following the unification, ancient Egypt entered what is often referred to as the early dynastic period, circa 3100 to 2686 BC, which saw the establishment of the first and second dynasties. These dynasties laid the foundational elements of the pharaonic system that would endure for millennia. Under these early rulers, such as Narmer, Jer, and Den, the polity expanded, trade flourished, and monumental architecture began to take shape, foreshadowing the grandeur of subsequent eras. Dynastic rulers emphasized their power and divine status through the construction of elaborate tombs, enshrining their legacies for eternity. This trend of monumental building became a crucial aspect of their rule, reinforcing the concept of divine kingship among the populace. Importantly, the first dynasties also illustrated significant developments in art and culture. During this period, hieroglyphic writing began to be formalized, allowing for records of trade, accounts of daily life, and religious texts that would become central to Egyptian identity. Artistic expressions flourished, with early pottery, sculpture, and jewelry becoming increasingly sophisticated, reflecting the skills of an emerging class of artisans. The development of a writing system was particularly critical as it allowed for the documentation of history, laws, and religious beliefs, transforming how information was shared across generations. The royal tombs contained not only the remains of the pharaohs, but also treasures and artifacts intended for use in the afterlife, vividly illustrating the Egyptians' profound beliefs in the afterlife and the importance they placed on the preservation and continuation of identity beyond death. As the political landscape of early dynastic Egypt evolved, the establishment of Memphis emerged as a significant turning point. Founded by Narmer, Memphis was strategically located at the apex of the Nile Delta, serving as the capital of a newly unified Egypt and a vital administrative and economic center. This city thrived due to its critical location along the major trade routes that connected Upper and Lower Egypt, facilitating interactions between peoples and cultures. Memphis became a vibrant hub for agricultural produce, trade goods, and cultural exchange, reflecting the complexities of early Egyptian civilization and setting a precedent that would endure in subsequent capitals. Memphis was not only a political and economic center, it also played a monumental role in the religious landscape of ancient Egypt. The city housed temples dedicated to the worship of the gods, most notably Ptah, the creator deity and patron of craftsmen. The significance of religion in Memphis was underscored by the construction of elaborate temples and monumental architecture, emphasizing the connection between governance and divinity. The blended identity of the city, both as a political powerhouse and a religious epicenter, solidified its status in Egyptian history and led to its recognition as a center of culture and innovation. The continued importance of Memphis as the capital would influence the political structure of Egypt for centuries, heralding a complex tapestry of governance, economics, and spirituality that would define ancient Egyptian civilization. The foundation of ancient Egyptian civilization is largely built upon the successes of agriculture and trade, both of which were effectively managed through the harnessing of the Nile River's resources. As early as 4000 BC, Egyptians were innovating in agricultural practices, implementing irrigation techniques that allowed them to cultivate crops beyond the natural floodplain of the Nile. The introduction of shaduf systems, simple devices used to lift water from the river, allowed farmers to extend their reach and productivity, effectively increasing crop yields on a more consistent basis. The surplus of crops cultivated, including wheat, barley, and flax, transformed the agrarian landscape, providing the necessary sustenance for a growing population and the means for developing a complex society. Trade flourished alongside agriculture, driven by the need for raw materials not found within the immediate environment of the Nile Valley. The Egyptians engaged in trade with their neighbors, including the Nubians to the south and Mediterranean cultures to the north, facilitating the exchange of goods such as gold, copper, cedar wood, and precious stones. The establishment of trade networks enabled resources to flow freely, leading to economic specialization among craftsmen and artisans in the cities. This rise of commerce not only enriched the Egyptian economy, but also contributed to the spread of cultural practices and ideas. The burgeoning trade networks fostered interactions that would result in the importation of foreign influences, enriching Egyptian art, religion, and daily life, and establishing connections that played a pivotal role in the continuing evolution of this ancient civilization. The birth of ancient Egypt represents a remarkable convergence of geography, innovation, and social development. From the early settlements along the Nile, which provided the necessary resources for subsistence, to the unification under King Narmer that established a cohesive political identity, each step in this evolution is deeply interwoven with the complexities of agricultural and trade practices. The establishment of Memphis as a capital underscored the melding of religious and political life in this new society. The first dynasties, alongside their remarkable rulers, would build upon this foundation, shaping the course of narrative that remains a source of fascination and learning. The Old Kingdom, a remarkable era in ancient Egyptian history, spanned from approximately 2686 to 2181 BCE, marking a time of great prosperity, cultural flourishing, and architectural innovation. It is often referred to as the Age of the Pyramids due to the monumental construction of these iconic structures that served as royal tombs. This period witnessed the rise of centralized power under the authority of the pharaohs, who were perceived as divine rulers, mediating between their subjects and the gods. The significance of the Old Kingdom lies not only in its extraordinary architectural achievements, but also in its advances in administration and governance, which laid the groundwork for subsequent dynasties. However, towards the end of the Old Kingdom, signs of decline and disorder began to emerge, culminating in a notable period of chaos known as the First Intermediate Period. The Old Kingdom marked the zenith of pharaonic power and centralized authority in ancient Egypt. The pharaoh was viewed not just as a political leader, but as a divine entity, whom the people regarded as both a god and a mortal. This duality fostered a deep-seated loyalty and reverence among the populace, allowing pharaohs to wield significant control over the state. The role of the pharaoh transcended mere governance. They were seen as the guarantors of Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order, truth, and justice, which was believed to be essential for the prosperity of the land. During this era, pharaohs such as Djoser, Sneferu, and Khufu revolutionized the way power was exercised in Egypt. The implementation of a centralized administration allowed the pharaohs to oversee vast resources and labor forces needed for monumental construction projects. This shift also facilitated the development of a bureaucratic system that included various officials, scribes, and priests who managed different aspects of governance, taxation, and social order. As a result, the strength of the pharaohs became synonymous with the stability and prosperity of Egypt. This intertwining of religion and politics established a legacy that would resonate through subsequent dynasties, emphasizing the importance of the divine right to rule. Among the most iconic structures of the Old Kingdom is the Step Pyramid of Djoser, which stands as a testament to the advancements in architecture and engineering during this period. Commissioned by Pharaoh Djoser, who ruled during the Third Dynasty circa 2670 to 2640 BCE, the Step Pyramid was not initially conceived as a traditional pyramid. Instead, it began as a simple mastaba, a flat-roofed, rectangular structure, which evolved into the six-tiered step-like structure we recognize today. The transition from mastaba to the Step Pyramid marked a significant technological innovation, a shift towards monumental building practices that would define the Old Kingdom. Constructed at the Saqqara necropolis near Memphis, the Step Pyramid complex encompasses temples, courtyards, and ceremonial structures, all designed to honor Djoser and serve his afterlife. The use of limestone, along with improved construction techniques, allowed for more precise and durable structures. Moreover, the pyramid itself reached a height of approximately 62 meters, making it one of the tallest man-made structures of its time. It is a symbol of the efforts to achieve immortality through monumental architecture, showcasing both the power of the pharaoh and the capabilities of the ancient Egyptian workforce. The legacy of the Step Pyramid directly influenced later pyramid constructions, paving the way for the development of the true smooth-sided pyramids. The pinnacle of pyramid construction in the Old Kingdom is epitomized by the Great Pyramids of Giza, particularly the Pyramid of Khufu, also known as the Great Pyramid. Built during the Fourth Dynasty, circa 2580 to 2560 BCE, the Great Pyramid represents the culmination of architectural ambition in ancient Egypt. Originally reaching a height of 146.6 meters, it stood as the tallest man-made structure for over 3,800 years, symbolizing the pharaoh's divine power and the technological prowess of the civilization. The construction of these pyramids was a monumental feat that involved a vast workforce, including skilled laborers, slaves, and craftsmen, all working in tandem to create these colossal edifices. The significance of the Great Pyramids extends beyond their architectural marvel. They serve as cultural symbols of the ancient Egyptian belief in the afterlife and the journey of the soul. Each pyramid was accompanied by mortuary temples, where priestly rituals were conducted to honor the deceased pharaoh, facilitating their transition to the afterlife. The alignment of the pyramids with celestial bodies such as the stars and the sun reflects the Egyptians' profound understanding of astronomy and their desire to connect the earthly realm with the divine. The administrative innovations during the Old Kingdom were pivotal in ensuring the effective governance of an increasingly complex society. The pharaohs established a hierarchical bureaucracy that allowed for efficient tax collection, resource distribution, and labor organization. At the top of this hierarchy was the vizier, who acted as the pharaoh's chief advisor and overseer of state affairs. This centralized structure facilitated more orderly governance and contributed to the stability and prosperity of Egypt. The establishment of provincial governance with nomarchs, regional governors, responsible for local administration, was another important development during the Old Kingdom. These officials possessed significant power and autonomy, managing resources, collecting taxes, and maintaining order within their regions. This decentralization of authority allowed the pharaohs to exert control over vast areas as they relied on trusted officials to implement their policies. Additionally, advancements in record-keeping, primarily through hieroglyphics, allowed for better management of state affairs, facilitating communication and organization within the government. Moreover, the cultivation of agriculture was integral to the Old Kingdom's economy. The annual inundation of the Nile provided fertile soil, enabling large-scale agricultural production. Consequently, surplus food could support the monumental labor force required for pyramid construction and other state projects. The implementation of a taxation system to manage grain production and trade underscored the importance of agricultural wealth in maintaining centralized power. As a result, these administrative and governance advancements allowed for the effective mobilization of resources, contributing to the enduring legacy of the Old Kingdom. Despite the remarkable achievements of the Old Kingdom, the latter part of this era was marked by a gradual decline and instability. Scholars propose several factors that contributed to this downfall, including a series of weak pharaohs whose inability to maintain control and unify the kingdom led to the erosion of centralized power. Additionally, the climate became less favorable for agriculture, leading to food shortages that exacerbated social unrest and discontent among the populace. As the pharaoh's power waned, regional governors, or nomarchs, began to assert their authority, leading to a fragmentation of power. This decentralization created rival factions vying for control, undermining the once cohesive state structure. The lack of a strong central authority gave rise to internal strife, as local leaders sought to carve out their domains, challenging the legitimacy of the pharaohs. The resultant political chaos exacerbated the crisis, culminating in what historians refer to as the First Intermediate Period, a time characterized by uncertainty, disorder, and fragmentation across the once unified kingdom. The First Intermediate Period stands in stark contrast to the achievements of the Old Kingdom, highlighting the fragility of centralized power in the face of environmental challenges and internal discord. Although the period that followed, known as the Middle Kingdom, would see the resurgence of centralized authority, the decline of the Old Kingdom remains a poignant reminder of the cyclical nature of history. The extraordinary achievements in governance, architecture, and culture during the Old Kingdom continued to influence successive generations, shaping the trajectory of ancient Egypt's rich history for centuries to come. In conclusion, the Old Kingdom represents a foundational era in ancient Egyptian civilization, characterized by the rise of pharaonic power, the construction of iconic pyramids, and significant advancements in governance. The pharaoh's divine authority and centralized administration facilitated monumental achievements that showcased the technological prowess and cultural ideals of the time. Pyramids like the Step Pyramid of Djoser and the Great Pyramids of Giza stand as enduring symbols of this remarkable age, and continue to evoke fascination and admiration worldwide. However, the decline of the Old Kingdom serves as a cautionary tale about the inherent vulnerabilities of centralized power amid environmental change and social upheaval. The transition to the First Intermediate Period illustrated the challenges of maintaining unity in a sprawling civilization. Nevertheless, the legacy of the Old Kingdom persists in its architectural brilliance, cultural advancements, and the foundational principles of governance that continue to resonate through the ages. Thus, the Age of the Pyramids remains a significant chapter in the story of human civilization, encapsulating both the heights of achievement and the complexities of societal dynamics. The first intermediate period of ancient Egypt, spanning roughly from 2181 to 2055 BCE, is often characterized as a time of chaos and instability following the end of the Old Kingdom. This period was marked by the collapse of centralized rule, leading to localized governance by regional rulers and intense competition for power among various factions. The breakdown of Egypt's centralized administration resulted in widespread famine and economic hardships, as the country's once stable agricultural systems fell into disarray. However, amidst the turmoil, the city of Thebes rose as a beacon of power, eventually playing a crucial role in reuniting a fragmented Egypt. This script explores the complexities of this era, beginning with the dissolution of centralized authority, progressing to regional power struggles, detailing the socio-economic ramifications for Egypt, and closing with the ascendancy of Thebes and the eventual restoration of a unified kingdom. The cessation of the Old Kingdom is often noted as a significant turning point in Egyptian history. After the 6th dynasty, which culminated around 2181 BCE, power became increasingly decentralized. Kings previously ruled with divine authority, primarily residing in the capital Memphis. However, as central authority began to weaken, provincial governors, or nomarchs, started to assert their autonomy. This fragmentation of power led to a loss of control over resources and governance. As nomarchs became more powerful in their own right, they frequently clashed with one another, establishing dynasties that wielded significant influence and control over the surrounding regions. This decentralization was not solely the result of weak leadership. It was exacerbated by a combination of factors. The physical infrastructure required for maintaining logistical efficiency faltered. The vast irrigation networks that had once aligned with centralized control became poorly managed. These issues, compounded by declining royal authority, tangled in a web of local disputes for control over trade routes, tax revenues, and agricultural lands. Towns and cities in regions as far-flung as the Nile Delta to Upper Egypt sought to assert their individuality, which led to the establishment of rival power centers that eroded the cohesive identity of Egypt as one nation. The political chaos resulted in a void, where the state's legitimacy became questionable. While nomarchs attempted to safeguard their territories and economic interests, their rivalries led to instability instead. This turmoil heralded an era characterized by conflict and uncertainty. With no authority figure able to unify the provinces, civil wars became common as local leaders vied for supremacy, setting the stage for prolonged violence and unrest. Citizens, caught in the turmoil of power struggles, felt the immediate impacts of this decaying structure, leading to a populace that was often desperate and looking for a savior in these trying times. Discontentment among the populace grew, fueled by tales of former grandeur during the Old Kingdom when the pharaohs were seen as powerful demigods. The societal shift towards local rulers instigated feelings of nostalgia and longing for a return to the perceived order and prosperity of previous eras. This longing made the populace ripe for the emergence of new leaders who could promise a return to stability and security. Nonetheless, the implications of this fragmentation had far-reaching consequences for Egypt. Each nomarch's failing authority echoed throughout society as essential state functions deteriorated. With the collapse of central authority, various regional rulers fought diligently for power, further adding to the chaos that enveloped Egypt during the first intermediate period. This era saw the emergence of numerous city-states, each controlled by competing dynasties, leading to fragmentation and intense rivalry. The division between the north and south became pronounced, with the Nile River acting as a historical artery for both agriculture and trade, now a source of contention among warlords. The rivalry and ambition of these local leaders often culminated in violent confrontations, the oscillation of alliances and betrayals painting a bleak picture of a divided Egypt. In Lower Egypt, a series of rulers in Memphis held significant influence, while in Upper Egypt, leaders in Thebes began to consolidate power, showcasing a clear geographical divide that would inform future power dynamics. The competition for influence often turned into outright warfare, as various nomarchs harnessed local militias to assert their dominions. Battles erupted across the regions, leading to significant bloodshed, as local systems turned inward under siege rather than collaborating strategically to restore a unified front. Each conflict created a rolling effect of instability, exasperated by an unending struggle for territory and resources. Amid this disarray, the lack of governmental stability further extended the open-door policy to foreign incursion and economic exploitation by outside forces, both of which would have historically been managed or mitigated under centralized rule. As resources depleted and famine gripped the land, neighboring Nubia and Libya eyed the fractured state as ripe for opportunistic encroachments. This outside pressure heightened the stakes of internal strife, leading to a chaotic environment where survival of the fittest guided the actions of many regional rulers. The ongoing power tussles among nomarchs became a driving force, precipitating a cycle of violence that entrenched division and weakened the social fabric of Egypt. Despite the turmoil, certain regional actors emerged, displaying talents in governance and military prowess that garnered them support among the people. These rulers began to lay claim to religious and cultural legacies as they attempted to establish their legitimacy. By appealing to the shared identity of ancient Egyptian civilization, they sought to differentiate themselves from their rivals and rally their followers. The exacerbated rivalry and regional allure, while isolating on one hand, also unleashed a competitive energy that fostered creativity in governance, art, and culture, albeit within heavily localized confines. Yet, the overarching narrative remained one of a country lacking cohesion and beset by the schisms created from competing ambitions. The pervasive violence and political instability during the First Intermediate Period resulted in a significant deterioration of Egypt's agricultural productivity, leading to widespread famine and economic struggles. Lands that had once flourished under the leadership of a centralized authority fell into disuse, resulting in a steady decline in food production. The Nile River, which served as the lifeblood of Egyptian agriculture, faced reduced flooding cycles in certain years, thus eliminating the vital nutrient replenishment that seasonal inundation provided. With local rulers more focused on asserting dominance over their neighbours than ensuring crop yields, the agricultural foundations of the economy crumbled. The socio-economic ramifications of this scenario affected the population at all levels. With famine setting in, hierarchies based on wealth and status began to break down as food scarcity took centre stage. Currency lost its value, and bartering systems emerged as communities prioritised survival over previously established economic frameworks. General desperation shifted the social fabric of Egypt, where art, culture, and luxurious living had once flourished. Now only the means to acquire food and sustenance dictated existence. As trade routes fragmented, the once thriving exchange with neighbouring regions dwindled, exacerbating the challenges of procuring essential resources. Amid the chaos, desperation and poverty inevitably led to civil unrest, as hungry citizens turned to protests and revolts against their local leaders. The lack of centralised governance meant widespread accountability for failures in how crops or resources were managed, allowing local leaders to retain their power in the face of growing discontent. The toll of famine and economic struggles rippled through the society, leaving no segment unscathed. As families struggled to feed themselves, they were forced to band together, not only for emotional support but for protection against marauding factions who saw weakness as opportunity. Communities fragmented and loyalty to local authorities became tenuous at best. Nevertheless, this dire situation also laid the groundwork for a longing for reunification, sparking hope among many that a visionary leader might arise to bring stability and prosperity back to Egypt. Amidst this backdrop of conflict and hunger, some began to seek unity, citing a return to the values of the Old Kingdom as a favourable path forward. Aspirations for a unified Egypt emerged among those weary of suffering, a value that would come to shape the ideological grounds for emerging political movements in the years to come. The concept of a singular tutelar ruling over the nation once more began to take root, and wounded citizens became the touchbearers of this long-lost hope. Interestingly, while much of Egypt was mired in chaos, Thebes emerged as a pivotal player during the First Intermediate Period. Nestled along the banks of the Nile in Upper Egypt, Thebes' strategic geographical position allowed it to control vital trade routes and vital agricultural lands, which became instrumental in bolstering its economic power. The local rulers began to cultivate their authority over the territories that surrounded the city, leveraging its growing influence to reshape the political landscape of Upper Egypt. The nomarchs of Thebes deftly capitalized on the disarray of competing regions. The early rulers of Thebes, such as Intef I and his successors, emerged as formidable figures in the shadow of disintegrating power structures. They understood the necessity of presenting themselves as legitimate heirs to the Old Kingdom's glory, invoking the memory of monumental architecture, grand palaces, and the divine rule of the pharaohs. This spectacle of power was wielded to inspire allegiance among local residents, laying a foundation that solidified the city as a political and cultural epicenter during the First Intermediate Period. Theban rulers worked to invigorate religious practices, enhancing Thebes' reputation as a venerated religious center, thus ensuring the loyalty of the populace by appealing to their spiritual aspirations in tumultuous times. Symbolism played a critical role in Thebes' rise, as the city aligned itself with deity Amun, positioning the nomarchs as divine representatives on earth. Ahmose, one of the key pharaohs that emerged from Thebes, embraced this divine connection and used it to assert claims of legitimacy over a united Egypt. This religious strategy fostered a sense of belonging among the citizens of Thebes, distinguishing them from the competing factions clinging to power elsewhere in the sprawling kingdom. As famine and economic struggles beset Egyptian society, the Theban rulers' preeminence became evident. They managed to provide steady leadership and resources to their citizens while presenting a vision of stability and prosperity. As conflicts continued to resonate throughout the regions, Thebes harnessed its growing military prowess to assert dominance over rival cities. Skirmishes turned into campaigns as Theban rulers expanded their influence into neighbouring territories, showcasing the city as the legitimate heart of a reunified Egyptian vision. This trajectory led to a rallying cry for supporters, consolidating forces and resources in the prospect of healing and rebuilding the fragmented nation. The eventual rise of Thebes ignited aspirations for a stronger unity among the fragmented regions, positioning the city as the backdrop for the resurgence of centralized governance and stability. In time, Thebes' quest for unification laid the foundation for a resurgence of centralized power. Recognizing the necessity for cooperation among the disparate regions, Theban rulers initiated campaigns centered on both military and diplomatic efforts to bring their rivals to heel. The leaders of Thebes adeptly understood that the re-establishment of a powerful kingdom required not just brute strength, but the forging of alliances that offered benefits to neighbouring rulers. As they chipped away at other competing factions in the north and south, both tactful negotiations and strategic warfare characterized their approach, paving the way for eventual reunification. Gradually, notable figures such as Mentuhotep II emerged, championing the cause of reunification through decisive military campaigns against the decaying rival states. His focused efforts bore fruit as he seized important strongholds and claimed the title of pharaoh, presenting himself as a figure leading the restoration of a unified Egypt. His rule signified the end of the First Intermediate Period and the dawn of the Middle Kingdom. This era saw a shift back to centralized governance, reinforcing the perception of Thebes as the preeminent political, cultural, and economic center of Egypt. In the dynamics of reunification, the language of continuity with earlier periods remained crucial, as Mentuhotep II and his successors adorned themselves with the regalia of the Old Kingdom rulers. They initiated significant building projects and religious reforms, reinforcing a narrative of legitimacy and divine favor. Temples dedicated to Amun flourished in Thebes, and construction projects revived art and culture throughout the nation. This cultural renaissance, built on previously established legacies, invited a wave of artistic expression and religious devotion, ultimately sealing the nation's revival in the larger narrative of Egyptian civilization. The reunification under Theban rule heralded a new era of prosperity, stability, and renaissance, as the nation began to heal from the ravages of the First Intermediate Period. The political strife gave way to a reign characterized by a flourishing trans-regional economy and cultural developments. The revitalization of central authority initiated a renewed relationship between the rulers and the populace, marked by restoration of resources, trade, and shared identity. The once fractured nation, now unified and reborn under Theban leadership, prepared to lay the groundwork for centuries of transformative history that would see ancient Egypt widely hailed for its contributions to civilization. The First Intermediate Period of ancient Egypt represents a complex tapestry of struggle, resulting from the fragmentation of centralized power, pervasive famine, and economic strife that led to a time of immense chaos. Nevertheless, it was during this tumultuous era that the foundations for renewal were laid, most notably through the rise of Thebes as a powerful city that would ultimately spearhead the unification of Egypt under capable leadership. The legacy of this period stands as a testament to the resilience of a civilization that endured profound challenges yet emerged anew to flourish, showcasing the indomitable spirit of ancient Egypt as it transitioned from chaos to a renewed state of grand aspirations and achievement. The Middle Kingdom of Egypt, spanning approximately from 2055 to 1650 BCE, stands as a remarkable period within the annals of ancient Egyptian history. It marks a profound shift from the tumultuous era of the First Intermediate Period to a time of political stability, cultural flourishing, economic growth, and territorial expansion. Central to this revival was the reunification of Egypt under Mentuhotep II, who rose to power at the helm of a unified state following years of fragmentation. This era became characterized by significant advancements in literature and art, bolstering religious practices that fostered a renewed connection between the people and the divine. Coupled with major infrastructure projects that improved irrigation systems and fortified cities, the Middle Kingdom established itself as a formidable force in both administrative competency and military prowess as it expanded into Nubia. However, this period of affluence would eventually face challenges that prompted a gradual weakening of the pharaoh's control, leading to the tumultuous events of the Second Intermediate Period. This script explores these key components of the Middle Kingdom and the intricate dynamics at play during this transformative time in ancient Egypt. The reunification of Egypt under Mentuhotep II marked a pivotal moment that set the stage for the Middle Kingdom's cultural revival. Following the chaos of the First Intermediate Period, Egypt had splintered into rival factions, leading to a breakdown in political order and social cohesion. Mentuhotep II, the ruler of the 11th dynasty, emerged as a unifying force capable of transcending regional divisions. His military conquests were instrumental in bringing together Upper and Lower Egypt, re-establishing centralized governance and restoring the authority of the pharaoh, which had waned during the preceding years of disarray. Mentuhotep II's reign is illuminated by the construction of monumental architecture. His mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari serves as a testament to his dedication to religious and cultural traditions, standing as an enduring symbol of the revival of pharaonic power. Moreover, he utilized strategic marriages and alliances to consolidate his position, further fortifying his hold over a once divided nation. The theme of rebirth, both literal and metaphorical, is reflected in the art and inscriptions of his time, which celebrate the reclamation of order and stability under his rule. The impact of Mentuhotep II's leadership extended beyond political unification. His innovative governance established the groundwork for a new administrative structure that prioritized efficiency and accountability, ensuring resources were allocated judiciously throughout the kingdom. He appointed nomarchs, local governors, who were tasked with overseeing various regions and restoring agricultural production, thereby nurturing the economy. Through a combination of military prowess and diplomatic acumen, Mentuhotep II not only unified Egypt but also instilled a renewed sense of national identity, setting the stage for the cultural renaissance that would follow in the Middle Kingdom. The reign of Mentuhotep II came to symbolize a cherished turning point in Egyptian history. He not only restored stability to a fractured landscape, but also redefined the role of the pharaoh. It was during this period that the concept of divine kingship gained prominence, emphasizing the pharaoh's role as not only a political leader, but also a divine intermediary between the gods and the people. This transformation would lay the ideological foundation for the Middle Kingdom, propelling the culture towards an unprecedented period of artistic and intellectual achievements. The Middle Kingdom is often heralded as the golden era of Egyptian literature and art, intricately intertwined with deeper spiritual beliefs and practices. With the restoration of a centralized state, the ruling elite, including scribes and artists, experienced a newfound sense of patronage, leading to prolific output across various cultural domains. This period saw the emergence of literary masterpieces such as The Tale of Sinu and The Instructions of Amenemhat, which showcased not only compelling narratives but also reflections on morality, governance, and the human condition. These texts highlighted the importance of wisdom, duty, and personal integrity. Art during the Middle Kingdom also experienced significant evolution, moving away from the rigid conventions of the Old Kingdom toward more expressive forms that captured human emotion and realism. Sculptors and painters embraced new techniques, evident in the dynamic poses of statues, which conveyed vitality and movement. Tomb artwork gained sophistication, depicting scenes of daily life, religious rituals, and the afterlife, often infused with symbolic meaning. The use of colour, alongside intricate details in the depictions of gods, men, and nature, reflected a deeper connection with spiritual beliefs and an understanding of the divine balance that governed existence. Religion flourished during the Middle Kingdom, as beliefs coalesced around key deities such as Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and Amun, who became increasingly prominent as a national god. The syncretism of local and state divinities led to the establishment of grand temples, where prayer, offerings, and festivals flourished, reinforcing the societal fabric. The belief in an afterlife became an integral part of everyday life, inspiring elaborate burial practices and a focus on securing a favourable judgment in the afterlife. The era witnessed a rise in personal piety, as citizens expressed their devotion through both public ceremonies and personal acts of worship, reflecting a deep-rooted faith that transcended social classes. The harmonization of literature, art, and religion led to a cultural flourishing that created a sense of unity among the populace. The stability offered by the unified pharaonic authority allowed for a collective identity rooted in shared beliefs and values. As stories of the past were preserved through written records, artists captured this zeitgeist through visual representation in temples and tombs. The reverberations of this flourishing were felt across generations, embedding a legacy that shaped the identity of ancient Egypt and continued to capture the imagination of those who gazed upon its remains in the centuries to follow. Infrastructure development was a hallmark of the Middle Kingdom, reflecting the administrative sophistication and strategic vision of its rulers. The establishment of vast irrigation systems marked a significant advancement in agricultural productivity, allowing for enhanced cultivation of the fertile land along the Nile. The construction of canals not only ensured reliable water supply for crops, but also served as vital transportation routes for trade, connecting different regions within the kingdom. This innovation was crucial in supporting the growing population and stabilizing the economy as Egypt moved towards greater self-sufficiency. One of the notable projects was the construction of the canal linking the Nile to the Red Sea, often attributed to Pharaoh Senusret II during the 12th dynasty. This ambitious infrastructure project facilitated trade with neighbouring regions, effectively expanding Egypt's reach and influence. The enhancements in transportation also allowed for resource mobilization, enabling the pharaohs to amass wealth through profitable trade routes, while simultaneously fostering cultural exchanges with foreign lands. As a result, Cairo, Thebes, and other urban centres flourished as bustling hubs of commerce, mirroring the surge in architectural and artistic endeavours that characterised the era. The emergence of defensive fortresses along the borders reflected the military aspirations of the Middle Kingdom, particularly in the strategic region of Nubia. As Egypt expanded its territory, pharaohs recognised the need to secure their gains against potential threats from rivals and tribes in the south. These fortresses served multiple purposes. They provided military outposts, administrative centres, and opportunities for local commerce. The fortresses were strategically positioned to guard precious resources such as gold and other minerals found in Nubia, which greatly contributed to the wealth and power of the state. As Egyptian civilization thrived through these infrastructural advancements, the intricate balance between architectural innovation, economic stability, and military strategy painted a complex picture of life during the Middle Kingdom. The amalgamation of effective governance with ambitious projects promoted a vibrant national identity that permeated every aspect of Egyptian life. This collective effort towards progress positioned Egypt as a dominant civilization on the African continent, laying the groundwork for future advancements while underscoring the intricate interplay of power, culture, and identity. Military expansion characterized the Middle Kingdom's aggressive quest to reclaim territories and enhance Egypt's influence, particularly in Nubia. In contrast to earlier periods marked by seclusion, the rulers of the Middle Kingdom perceived military campaigns as essential to securing the kingdom's borders and expanding its economic base. This strategic pivot was born out of an understanding of the wealth that lay in Nubia, especially its gold mines and access to trade networks that connected Egypt to sub-Saharan Africa. Pharaohs such as Senusret IV and Amenemhat III led several campaigns into Nubian territories, utilizing a mix of military might and diplomatic relations to assert control over these regions. the conquest of Nubia had significant implications for Egypt's economy and military stature. By controlling Nubia, particularly the wealthy region of Kush, Egypt was able to secure access to vital resources, including gold, ivory, and exotic goods that enriched the pharaonic economy. The engagement with Nubian territory not only solidified Egypt's standing as a dominant power, but also facilitated cultural and trade exchanges that enriched both civilizations. Egyptian influence spread, as evidenced by the adoption of Egyptian art and customs in Nubian culture, illustrating a complex relationship forged through military expeditions. Another critical aspect of military expansion was the development of a professional army, which was better equipped and trained than its predecessors. The introduction of new weaponry, including composite bows and chariots, enhanced the effectiveness of Egyptian troops during campaigns. This militarization was not merely for conquest, it also reflected the pharaoh's strategy of legitimization, wherein successful military leaders were revered and honored within society. Military victories were celebrated through monumental art and literature, reinforcing the idea of the pharaoh as a divine protector who ensured harmony and stability for his people. Despite these initial successes, military campaigns were juxtaposed with challenges. The sustained military presence in Nubia required considerable resources and management, which began to stretch the reach of the pharaoh's authority. While expansionism fostered initial prosperity, it eventually contributed to strains on the socio-political fabric of the central authority, as local governance became crucial in the administratively distant regions. The ambitious military endeavours of the Middle Kingdom ultimately paved the way for complex dynamics that intertwined expansion, governance, and cultural exchange, setting in motion the events that would culminate in the eventual weakening of pharaonic control. The cultural and military achievements of the Middle Kingdom eventually gave way to challenges that strained the once unified authority of the pharaohs, leading to a gradual weakening of centralized control. A confluence of factors, including economic pressures, regional discontent, and foreign incursions, contributed to this decline. As the challenges of governance grew, pharaohs began to increasingly rely on local leaders, or nomarchs, to maintain order and oversee resources within their respective regions. While this decentralization allowed for local governance, it simultaneously undermined the absolute authority of the pharaoh, which had been a hallmark of earlier dynasties. The burgeoning autonomy of local authorities was compounded by recurrent issues stemming from resource allocation, particularly regarding land, water, and agricultural production. The reliance on the Nile for irrigation made the kingdom vulnerable to fluctuations in the river's flooding cycles. During periods of drought or inadequate flooding, crop yields would diminish, leading to food shortages and economic distress. The populace's disenchantment with the ruling elite grew, as the pharaohs were viewed as unable to manage their divine responsibilities of ensuring bountiful harvests and societal welfare. Additionally, increasing pressures from external forces further tested the resilience of the Middle Kingdom. The growing threat from the Asiatics and Libyans exacerbated fears of invasion and military defeat. Dominated by strategic ambitions, these groups encroached upon Egyptian territories, challenging the military vigour of the pharaohs. The overextension of resources, coupled with the inability to secure borders, diminished the perceived invulnerability of the pharaoh's rule and instigated a shift in public perception regarding divine kingship. The culmination of these challenges marked a transition towards the Second Intermediate Period, where the control of the pharaohs eroded significantly. The once mighty centralized state, characterized by monumental achievements in culture, art, and military might, began to splinter into regional powers. The pharaoh's divine mandate lost its previous influence as the authority of local leaders surged, setting the stage for a new chapter in Egyptian history marked by fragmentation and change. The Middle Kingdom, while remembered for its cultural renaissance and prosperity, ultimately serves as a poignant reminder of the fragile nature of power and the intricate dynamics that govern the rise and fall of civilizations. The Middle Kingdom of Egypt stands as a significant milestone in the narrative of ancient human civilization, representing a period rich in cultural revival, artistic accomplishments, and military expansion. The reunification under Mentuhotep II set the tone for an era that would witness towering achievements in literature, art, and religion, while establishing robust infrastructure that bolstered the economy and security. Yet, the very forces that propelled the kingdom towards greatness also sowed the seeds of eventual decline. Internal strife, environmental challenges, and external pressures contributed to a gradual erosion of pharaonic authority, leading to the fragmentation that characterized the subsequent periods of Egyptian history. The legacy of the Middle Kingdom persists as both a celebration of human ingenuity and a compelling exploration of the complexity of power. Ultimately, it serves as a testament to the delicate balance between strength and vulnerability, unity and division, a theme that resonates throughout history even to the present day. Each dimension of this era, from its literary masterpieces to its ambitious infrastructural projects, enriches our understanding of a civilization that left an indelible mark on the world, emphasizing the triumphs and tribulations that shaped its long and storied journey. The Second Intermediate Period, one of the most tumultuous epochs in ancient Egyptian history, witnessed the unprecedented invasion of the Hyksos, a Semitic people originating from the Levant. Their name, believed to be derived from the Egyptian phrase Hekaukasut, translates to rulers of foreign lands, highlighting their status as outsiders. The historical background of the Hyksos remains somewhat obscure. They were likely a confederation of tribes and city-states, notably Canaanites and other Semitic groups. They began infiltrating Egypt during the Middle Kingdom, exploiting the political disarray that characterized the era. Following the fall of the 12th dynasty, which had unified Egypt under powerful pharaohs, a power vacuum emerged, providing the Hyksos with the opportunity to assert dominion over the Nile Valley. The Hyksos utilized a combination of military strategy and psychological warfare to secure their grip on Egypt. After initially penetrating the eastern delta region, they positioned themselves in important cities, most significantly at Avaris, their capital. This strategic location allowed them control over vital trade routes and facilitated quick access to resources in both Lower and Upper Egypt. The use of advanced warfare tactics played a crucial role in their conquests. Unlike the Egyptians, who had been predominantly reliant on foot soldiers equipped with spears and shields, the Hyksos employed horse-drawn chariots, a revolutionary technology that provided them with superior mobility and firepower. This significant development in military technology altered the landscape of warfare within Egypt and shifted the balance of power during the Second Intermediate Period, marking a stark deviation from the traditional methods employed by the Egyptian armies. The Hyksos soon established a legitimacy-based governance system, reflecting aspects of Egyptian culture while also retaining their distinct identity. They adopted Egyptian titles and adorned themselves with traditional pharaonic regalia, presenting themselves as legitimate rulers of Egypt to their new subjects. This dual identity allowed the Hyksos to integrate into the socio-political fabric of Egyptian society, while simultaneously imposing their own frameworks and practices. Over time, the Hyksos administration demonstrated a degree of religious tolerance, leveraging the polytheistic nature of Egyptian belief systems to consolidate their power. Despite their unique startup strategies, underlying tensions persisted between the Hyksos and the native Egyptian populace, setting the stage for a protracted struggle for power that would define the era. Amidst a backdrop of economic stability and cultural synthesis, the Hyksos era did not come without its challenges. As they ruled, tensions grew not only with the native Egyptians but also among the Hyksos themselves. The provinces of Egypt had varying degrees of loyalty to Hyksos leadership, evidenced by uprisings in certain districts. The decentralized nature of Egypt, coupled with the Hyksos' reliance on foreign troops, created fractures in their mandate. By the time the native Egyptian princes began to unify against their foreign oppressors in the late 17th dynasty, it was evident that the Hyksos rule, despite its initial successes, was fundamentally weakened. This set the stage for the eventual resistance against the Hyksos, heralding a new chapter in Egyptian history marked by conflict, unity, and the rise of the hero kings. The Hyksos invasion of Egypt was significantly characterized by their introduction of advanced military technology, particularly horse-drawn chariots, which revolutionized warfare in the region. Prior to the Hyksos entry, Egyptian armies relied heavily on infantry, equipped mainly with bows, spears and shields and fighting in tightly knit formations. The horse-drawn chariot, however, represented a substantial leap in tactical combat capabilities, allowing for increased speed, mobility, and a versatility that the Egyptian armies had yet to adopt. The Hyksos' effective use of chariots, often equipped with archers, allowed them to engage and retreat quickly, making them a fearsome adversary on the battlefield. The psychological impact of swiftly moving chariots striking suddenly left the Egyptian soldiers, who were traditionally accustomed to prolonged hand-to-hand combat, in a state of confusion and disarray. The technology of the chariot was not solely limited to combat, it also symbolized power and prestige. As the Hyksos integrated into Egyptian society, horse-drawn chariots became a status symbol among the elite, leading to their adoption by local princes and noble families eager to emulate the new rulers. The construction of chariots required skilled artisans and an understanding of not only warfare but also horsemanship and logistics, ushering in an era of technological advancement and economic opportunities in both agriculture and warfare. The Hyksos introduction of these new war machines marked a cultural shift, as the Egyptians began to innovate and adapt military technologies and connected with trade routes that supplied horses and new equipment. This transformation also signified a departure from the once rigid military traditions of ancient Egypt, as rulers found themselves eager to assimilate the Hyksos' effective methods in order to reclaim their sovereignty. In addition to military applications, the Hyksos brought forth other innovations, including improved weaponry made from bronze and the implementation of composite bows that could shoot arrows with greater range and accuracy. These advancements not only enhanced their military prowess, but also set the foundation for future Egyptian armies, which would eventually utilize these technologies against the Hyksos themselves. The evolution of warfare during this period would have far-reaching implications, as the Egyptians, once seen as invincible, were compelled to modernize and adapt to these new combat strategies. The furious struggles between the Hyksos invaders and native Egyptians also catalyzed an arms race that precipitated an era of militarization. The Egyptians adopted and refined the technology brought by the Hyksos, setting the stage for future military successes during the New Kingdom. The earlier legitimacy of Hyksos power, punctuated by technological supremacy, began to wane as native Egyptian rulers recognized the advantages of the materials and tactics employed by the Hyksos. Burgeoning knowledge spread amongst the Egyptian princes not only enabled them to form coalitions of regional power, but inspired them to innovate in response to their occupiers. By assimilating and improving upon the technologies introduced by the Hyksos, the Egyptians remolded their military strategies, preparing to reclaim their lost sovereignty. This competitive spirit fueled the long-term resilience essential for the eventual resurgence during the New Kingdom. Consequently, while the Hyksos initially gained the upper hand through their advanced chariots and weaponry, the seeds of rebellion were sown, demonstrating the cyclical nature of technological triumphs, adaptations, and the ever-evolving landscape of power in ancient Near Eastern societies. As the Hyksos solidified their hold on Egypt, the struggles of native Egyptian rulers to regain power significantly shaped the dynamic between the occupiers and the oppressed. Initially, the initial rulers of the Second Intermediate Period found themselves at a considerable disadvantage. Many of Egypt's pharaohs fled southward into regions like Thebes, effectively losing both territorial control and the political legitimacy upon which their authority rested. They had to confront not only the military might of the Hyksos, but also a fractured political landscape, where local rulers, or nomarchs, wielded significant influence within their respective regions. Disjointed and weakened by societal disarray, the Egyptian elite were often at odds with each other, complicating any attempts at coordinated resistance against the invaders. The fragmentation further complicated the recovery of centralized power, as every region had broadly different interests, perspectives on collaboration, and responses to the Hyksos presence. As the tension between the Egyptians and Hyksos intensified over the years, many native rulers resorted to guerrilla tactics and localized uprisings in attempts to harass and weaken Hyksos forces. However, these sporadic skirmishes lacked cohesion and coordination, leading to mixed results, which did little to stem the tide of Hyksos influence. The Egyptian populace was often caught in a state of flux, navigating shifting loyalties with a landscape heavily influenced by foreign power, while grappling with economic disruptions caused by the invasion. The lack of effective communication, coupled with the difficulty of securing alliances between the various local rulers, perpetuated the struggle, leaving essential regions of Egypt vulnerable and significantly furthering the Hyksos entrenchment in power. Nevertheless, over time, loyalty to their native rulers began to coalesce, inspired by a rising sense of nationalism and shared identity that galvanized the Egyptian populace against the Hyksos. As more and more local princelings recognized the need for unity, coalitions began to form led by determined leaders, These leaders sought to emulate the martial fortitude of their Hyksos adversaries, drawing inspiration from Egyptian gods and ideology. Eager to unite their armies and overthrow foreign rulers, emerging leaders like Kamose, Ahmose's brother, began laying the foundations for a more strategic resistance. The morale among Egyptian forces rose as they observed early victories and consistent alliances being forged. Although these united efforts led to incremental successes, the struggle was not without tribulations, as regional rivalries and historical grievances frequently threatened to undermine cooperation. The Egyptian struggle is emblematic of a wider human tendency to confront oppression, revealing the complexities of identity, allegiance, and power. While the Egyptian princes faced numerous challenges in their pursuit of unity against the Hyksos, the evolving military landscape shifted gradually toward potential success. It was not merely technological advancements or improved tactics that would steer the outcome of these conquests, but also the ancient Egyptian connection to their land and identity. As the idea of liberation morphed from a distant hope into a palpable aspiration, it charged the collective consciousness of the Egyptian people and their leaders, laying the groundwork for a unified resurgence. Ultimately, it became evident that coordinated resistance forged through shared goals and ambitions would be indispensable in overcoming the formidable oppression from the Hyksos. The resistance carried out by native Egyptian princes during the Second Intermediate Period emerged as a critical force opposing the Hyksos' grip on Egypt. Often isolated in their respective territories, these rulers oscillated between despair and determination as they contended with the various foreign accoutrements of Hyksos rule. Many of these princes had ancestral claims to power reinforced by millennia of Egyptian tradition. This familial legitimacy provided each prince with a theological mandate to restore the pharaonic lineage, a notion that invigorated their resistance efforts. These power dynamics played a significant role in shaping the military strategies employed by the princes and fostering a sense of unity that had previously been absent during the earlier years of oppression. The princes' resourcefulness was reflected in their developing strategies. Leaders like Seqenenre, who ruled in Thebes, sought to galvanize their forces by emphasizing unity against a common enemy, calling upon neighboring princes to join the fight. Various princes would form temporary alliances, often driven by expedient necessities and shifting political realities. This intricate web of alliances created a temporary respite against the Hyksos. Nevertheless, it often proved fragile. The uncertainty fostered by disparate interests would lead to betrayal and fragmentation at crucial moments, demonstrating the constant struggle to maintain cohesion amidst urgent circumstances. Ultimately, the fragmented nature of these alliances greatly complicated long-term efforts at resistance. Despite these tactical difficulties, the resourcefulness and resilience displayed by native Egyptian princes proved essential. Not only did they continue to wage military campaigns against the Hyksos forces, but they also engaged in efforts to foster local support among the Egyptian populace. The princes undertook initiatives to restore temples and reinforce local governance structures, which functioned to stimulate loyalty among their subjects. This resurgence of local pride and identity bolstered the collective psyche against Hyksos invaders. The princes' strategies became increasingly sophisticated, as established Egyptian religious practices and ancient beliefs were re-invoked as rallying cries to fortify opposition. Unifying the Egyptian populace, the culmination of these burgeoning efforts was encapsulated in the inspirational figure of Ahmose III, a noble prince who emerged as a transformative leader. By leading military campaigns against the Hyksos and actively rallying support among the fragmented factions across Egypt, Ahmose exemplified the right mix of military and political acumen necessary for unification. His leadership established a new narrative, transitioning from disjointed attempts at resistance to the galvanizing movement aimed at expelling the foreign rulers entirely. Ahmose's commitment to unification transcended mere military tactics and sought to re-establish Egyptian identity through lasting social, political, and religious reforms. His ability to inherit and consolidate the spirit of resistance initiated by earlier princes became the catalyst for a monumental shift in the tide of history, making the ultimate defeat of the Hyksos possible. The story of Ahmose Awar is intrinsically tied to the eventual liberation of Egypt from the Hyksos. Born into the tumult of the Second Intermediate Period, Ahmose's rise signified not merely the restoration of Egyptian sovereignty, but also the revitalization of its cultural and national identity. following the death of his brother Kamose, who had laid the foundation for unified resistance. Ahmose adopted a more dynamic and aggressive military posture. His early campaigns demonstrated both tactical creativity and a psychological understanding of warfare, bridging local grievances with wider calls for liberation. Ahmose transformed disparate elements of Egyptian society into a formidable force, effectively rallying numerous regional leaders and communities under a shared banner, a nationalism born of collective suffering at the hands of foreign oppressors. The military campaigns initiated by Ahmose were characterized by strategic assaults on key Hyksos strongholds. His forces advanced toward Avaris, where the heart of Hyksos power resided. Utilizing the very technologies that had initially enabled the Hyksos to dominate Egyptian lands, such as improved chariots and integrated infantry tactics, Ahmose and his forces mounted a calculated onslaught. The Egyptians had spent years absorbing lessons learned from combat with the Hyksos as they adapted their military strategies. As the siege of Avaris commenced, the resolute spirit of the Egyptian soldiers, now backed by cultural fervour, began to manifest newfound strength. Ahmose's forces breached the defences of Avaris, signalling a seismic shift in military fortunes and marking the beginning of the end for Hyksos rule. Once the siege culminated in victory, Amosathrone pursued the remnants of the Hyksos as they retreated toward Canaan. The relentless march of Egyptian soldiers reflected both determination and desire for closure after years of enslavement and oppression. As the geographical boundaries of Egypt expanded through successful campaigns, the Hyksos were vanquished and effectively driven out of the Nile Valley. Their expulsion symbolized not merely a reclaiming of physical territory, but also an emotional and spiritual reclamation for the Egyptian people. The restoration of order and authority fostered a renaissance marked by a dramatic resurgence of Egyptian art, culture, and governance. The victory over the Hyksos bore significant implications for the trajectory of Egyptian history. Amostrone's accomplishments secured his place as the founder of the 18th dynasty, marking the beginning of the New Kingdom. This era is celebrated as a high point of ancient Egyptian civilization, characterized by massive architectural projects, expanded trade networks, and renewed cultural achievements. The consolidation of power and authority under Ahmose paved the way for future pharaohs to build on foundational successes while repelling foreign threats. The liberation from the Hyksos and the restoration of the pharaonic order, championed by Ahmose, fostered a newfound sense of unity across Egypt. In a region defined by conflict and cultural confluence, it was under Ahmose that Egypt would find a way forward, transforming tragedy into a testament of resilience and evolution that still resonates through history today. In conclusion, the Second Intermediate Period serves as a poignant reminder of resilience in the face of oppression. It encapsulates not only the struggles faced by the native Egyptians, but also the profound military and cultural transformations prompted by the Hyksos invasion. The eventual overthrow of the Hyksos came at a pivotal moment, restoring Egypt's sovereignty and setting the stage for considerable advancements in art, architecture, and governance that characterized the following centuries. Leaders like Ahmose became central figures of unity and resistance, reconnecting Egyptians with their historical identity while unveiling a new era defined by resurgence and glory. The New Kingdom, spanning from approximately 1550 to 1070 BCE, marks a critical phase in ancient Egyptian history characterized by unparalleled power, wealth, and cultural achievement. This era was instrumental in transforming Egypt into a superpower, solidifying its influence over the ancient Near East. The groundwork for this transformation occurred through a potent combination of military prowess, diplomatic acumen, and monumental architectural accomplishments. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under strong pharaohs, along with the establishment of a centralized administration, allowed Egypt not only to fend off foreign threats, but also to expand its territory beyond its traditional borders. Underlying these developments was a powerful belief system that revered the pharaoh as a divine ruler who maintained cosmic order, thus reinforcing the legitimacy of his reign and the state. The New Kingdom witnessed an unprecedented consolidation of power, which can largely be attributed to strategic military campaigns and diplomatic relationships established with neighboring states. The construction of a professional army, coupled with advanced military technologies, enabled Egyptian rulers to launch significant campaigns against adversaries in Nubia and the Levant. This period also saw the emergence of lucrative trade networks that extended throughout Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean, fostering a remarkable exchange of materials and ideas that further fueled the nation's economy and cultural identity. The establishment of Egypt as a superpower during the New Kingdom era underscored its role not merely as a regional power, but as a dominant player in global politics and trade. This transformation laid the foundation for a period of cultural flourishing that would leave a lasting legacy in art, architecture, religion, and governance. One of the pivotal figures of the New Kingdom era was Thutmose III, often hailed as the Napoleon of Egypt. His reign, which lasted from 1479 to 1425 BCE, marked a turning point in Egypt's military exploits and territorial expansion. Thutmose III was determined to not only defend Egypt's borders, but to extend its influence into the lands of the Levant and beyond. His military campaigns, which included over 17 expeditions into Canaan and Syria, were characterized by meticulous planning and organization. The Battle of Megiddo, one of his most significant conflicts, demonstrated his tactical brilliance and capacity for innovation in warfare. Thutmose III's approach to military campaigns not only secured key territories for Egypt, but also facilitated the establishment of vassal states that paid tribute to the pharaoh, thereby enhancing Egypt's wealth and influence. The expansion during Thutmose III's reign instituted an era where Egypt directly controlled vast swathes of territory, establishing trade routes that connected Egypt with distant lands like Anatolia and Mesopotamia. This control allowed for the influx of wealth in the form of tributes and exotic goods, from precious metals to luxury items such as ivory and cedar wood, thereby enriching the Egyptian state. Thutmose III's campaigns were notable not just for their military outcome, but also for their enduring impact on international relations. The subsequent treaties with various states echoed throughout the centuries, showcasing how military force, when coupled with diplomacy, could design a landscape of influence on foreign policy. His ability to integrate conquered peoples into the empire further extended Egypt's cultural hegemony, solidifying a legacy that resonated well beyond his own reign. Beyond mere territorial ambition, the military achievements of Thutmose III contributed profoundly to the Egyptian identity during the New Kingdom. His successful campaigns allowed Egyptians to boast an imperial narrative, fostering a strong sense of national pride among the populace. The pharaoh was celebrated as a military hero, an essential figure in the pantheon of Egyptian royalty, lauded in temple inscriptions and monuments. Such narratives not only promoted a collective memory of military prowess, but also solidified the divine association with the pharaoh, as he was seen as the earthly manifestation of the god Horus. The divine kingship exalted the role of the pharaoh, linking military success directly to the health and prosperity of the nation in the eyes of the people. Thutmose III's legacy was not merely one of expansion. It was about crafting an image of Egyptian invincibility that would inspire future generations. Following Thutmose III's remarkable consolidation of power, the subsequent reign of Amenhotep III, circa 1386 to 1349 BCE, epitomized the zenith of royal power and wealth in ancient Egypt. His reign is often regarded as a golden age marked by unprecedented prosperity, artistic achievement, and international prestige. An adept diplomat, Amenhotep III established alliances through strategic marriages and treaties with neighboring states, including the Mitanni, Babylonia, and Hatti. These diplomatic efforts effectively secured Egypt's borders and encouraged the flow of trade, bringing a new influx of wealth that was channeled into art and monumental architecture. Patronage of the arts flourished during this period, manifesting in exquisite jewellery, sculpture, and painting, thus reflecting the high cultural development of New Kingdom society. Under Amenhotep III, Egypt's wealth flourished through the flourishing of trade routes that connected the Nile to regions rich in resources. The influx of gold, silver, and luxury goods transformed the economy, allowing the pharaoh to commission monumental projects that would become hallmarks of his reign. The construction of the Temple of Luxor and the Grand Mortuary Temple at Medinet Habu exemplified the architectural prowess of the time, with their intricate carvings and exquisite reliefs showcasing the religious devotion and artistic mastery of the era. Such structures were not solely religious centres. They served as propaganda tools that reinforced the divine nature of the pharaoh's rule, further cementing Amenhotep III's legacy as a cultural and architectural innovator. Moreover, Amenhotep III's reign was characterized by a rich intermingling of cultures, as artists, craftsmen, and scholars from various parts of the empire contributed to the creation of a vibrant cultural tapestry. This period saw the blending of artistic styles and religious practices, creating a cosmopolitan Egypt that drew inspiration from the diverse peoples it interacted with. The wealth generated under Amenhotep III allowed for the establishment of lavish court ceremonies and festivals that further projected Egypt's prominence and showcased its cultural richness. This wealth translated into influence, positioning Egypt as not just a political power, but a cultural beacon in the ancient world. The legacy of Amenhotep III would greatly impact his successors, paving the way for future pharaohs to revel in the foundational strengths he had established. The architectural achievements of the New Kingdom were remarkable, and they reached their zenith during the periods of Thutmose III and Amenhotep III. The construction of monumental temples such as the Temple of Karnak and Luxor not only demonstrated the might and religious devotion of the pharaohs, but also encapsulated the cultural and political ambitions of their reigns. The Temple of Karnak, dedicated primarily to the god Amun, became the largest religious complex in the world, showcasing the architectural innovation and grandeur that defined this epoch. Spanning over 200 acres, the temple complex included massive pylons, towering obelisks, and intricate hieroglyphics that detailed the extensive accomplishments of the pharaohs. Its sheer scale and complexity mirrored the expansive reach of Egyptian power, while its decorative artistry highlighted the sophistication of New Kingdom artisans. The building of the Temple of Luxor, initiated by Amenhotep III and later completed under Ramses II, further exemplified the architectural grandeur of the period. Luxor became a crucial center for religious activities and annual festivals, and served as the setting for the Opet festival, which celebrated the inundation of the Nile and honored the transitory union of the gods with the earthly realm. Such temples were not merely religious sites, they were integral to the political system, solidifying the pharaoh's connection to the divine and reinforcing his role as intermediary between the gods and the people. The significant resources allocated to these constructions illustrated the extent of Egypt's wealth during the New Kingdom, with labourers, craftsmen, and artists collaborating to produce structures that would be revered for millennia. The grandeur of these temples extended beyond their physical presence. They were symbols of Egypt's religious and ideological beliefs. They served as repositories of knowledge and art, functioning as places of worship, ritual, and learning. The decorative walls of these temples, adorned with hieroglyphics, conveyed narratives of divine kingship, military victories, and the gods' favour, reinforcing the status of the pharaoh in the eyes of the populace. Furthermore, the immense scale of these projects fostered a sense of unity among the Egyptian people, binding them to their spiritual and cultural heritage. The temples of Karnak and Luxor became treasures of not only religious significance, but also historical importance. Amidst the tales of powerful pharaohs during the New Kingdom, the reign of Hatshepsut stands out as a unique narrative that challenged traditional gender roles in ancient Egypt. Ascending to power around 1479 BCE, Hatshepsut, the daughter of Thutmose I and wife of Thutmose II, initially served as regent for her stepson Thutmose III. However, she deftly maneuvered herself into power, ultimately reigning as pharaoh. In doing so, she adopted masculine regalia and titles, presenting herself as a male figure of authority, even while publicly celebrating her femininity. Hatshepsut's reign was marked by an emphasis on trade over military conquest, which distinguished her from many of her predecessors. This approach yielded immense prosperity, notably through her famous trading expedition to Punt, bringing back treasures that enriched the Egyptian economy. Her architectural accomplishments rivaled those of her contemporaries, with her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari serving as a hallmark of her reign. Designed to honour Amun and solidify her divine kingship, the temple featured stunning terraces, colossal statues, and intricately carved reliefs that narrated her life and achievements, illustrating her right to rule. Hatshepsut's ability to commission such monumental projects demonstrated that she was more than a mere regent. She was a legitimate pharaoh who left an indelible mark on Egyptian history. Through these accomplishments, she managed to redefine the pharaoh's role within society, proving that effective leadership could transcend gender norms and expectations. Hatshepsut's reign marked a significant shift in the perception of female power within the Egyptian monarchy. Her success as a ruler served as a model for later queens and women in positions of influence. reflecting the potential for women to occupy roles of authority in a patriarchal society. However, following her death, her legacy was largely erased from Egyptian history. Later pharaohs, including Thutmose III, undertook extensive campaigns to remove her name and likeness from sources to reaffirm the male-dominated narrative of rulership. Despite this erasure, the impact of Hatshepsut's reign is undeniable, as it highlights the multifaceted nature of power dynamics in ancient Egypt and the complex interplay between gender and authority. The New Kingdom represents an extraordinary chapter in the annals of ancient Egyptian history, marked by immense power, wealth, and cultural achievements. This era not only birthed formidable military campaigns and territorial expansion, but also catalyzed a culture of artistic expression and monumental architecture. Leaders like Thutmose III, Amenhotep III, and Hatshepsut exemplified different facets of this transformative period, showcasing how individual legacies could shape the collective narrative of an empire. The military exploits laid the groundwork for Egypt's dominance, while diplomacy embedded its influence in surrounding regions. Concurrently, grand architectural undertakings and the establishment of majestic temples illuminated the divine kingship of pharaohs, affirming their roles as both spiritual and political leaders. As modern scholars continue to excavate and study the remnants of this remarkable civilization, it becomes increasingly clear that the New Kingdom's impact extends beyond the temporal confines of its era. The integration of diverse cultures under the auspices of powerful rulers contributed to a rich historical tapestry that informs our understanding of governance, art, and religion in human history. Furthermore, the indelible impressions left by powerful queens like Hatshepsut invite contemplation on the evolving perceptions of gender and power in political contexts. The New Kingdom serves as a vital reminder of how distinct individuals can leave an enduring impact on a civilization's trajectory, even in the face of systemic opposition. Through the lens of the New Kingdom, we witness an ancient superpower's zenith, one that boldly shaped the course of its own history and the surrounding geopolitical landscape. As such, the legacy of this era is not confined merely to the monumental structures and artistic masterpieces that have survived the sands of time. It resonates in the very narratives that continue to echo within contemporary discussions of power, cultural identity, and societal structure. The New Kingdom stands as a testament to the ambitions and achievements of a civilization that strove to connect the divine with the earthly, crafting a legacy that would transcend millennia and inspire generations to come. The Amarna period represents one of the most radical shifts in ancient Egyptian history, primarily due to the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten. This revolution is characterized by the monotheistic worship of Aten, the sun disk, a stark departure from the traditional polytheistic practices that dominated Egyptian religion for centuries. Akhenaten's religious reforms began early in his reign, as he sought to diminish the power of the priesthood of Amun, the primary deity of Thebes, and redirect worship to Aten, whom he regarded as the sole and universal god. This monumental shift was not merely a spiritual belief system, it was a political strategy aimed at consolidating power and reducing the influence of rival priesthoods that threatened the central authority of the pharaoh. The ideological framework of Akhenaten's religious revolution claimed that Aten transcended all other deities. Thus, Akhenaten adopted a form of sun worship that glorified the Aten above all else, proclaiming that he was the sole intermediary between the people and this divine being. Akhenaten's elevation of the Aten ushered in new forms of artistic expression, emphasizing an intimate familial relationship between the pharaoh, his wife Nefertiti, and their children, often depicted basking in the rays of the Aten. This not only redefined the nature of divine interaction within the public sphere, but also altered the perception of kingship itself. By presenting himself as the singular focus of worship connected directly to Aten, Akhenaten sought to embody divine authority on a personal level, reshaping the existential narrative of what it meant to be a ruler in ancient Egypt. In tandem with his religious reforms, Akhenaten undertook the ambitious project of constructing a new capital city, Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna, which literally means the horizon of Aten. This move was both geographically and symbolically significant, as Akhetaten was positioned away from the traditional centers of power centered around Thebes. The establishment of this new city served multiple purposes. It solidified Akhenaten's devotion to the Aten, it provided a physical manifestation of his break from the past, and it allowed for the relocation of the Egyptian elite, who were required to adapt their lives to the new religious doctrines. The layout of Akhetaten was meticulously designed to align with Akhenaten's religious beliefs. The city was constructed with large temples dedicated to Aten and extensive open-air spaces where worship could occur under the sun's rays. The urban planning reflected the philosophical ideals of Akhenaten's belief system, emphasizing openness and transparency instead of the enclosed spaces typical of traditional temples dedicated to various gods. The artistry within Akhetaten showcased unconventional representations that emphasized realism and intimacy, diverging from previous artistic conventions that glorified pharaohs and exaggerated forms. This radical architectural endeavor not only manifested Akhenaten's devotion, but also framed the social structure of the city, where religion and governance became indistinguishable, as religious observance was integrated into the everyday lives of the inhabitants. The repercussions of Akhenaten's religious revolution were profound and far-reaching, leading to significant changes within Egyptian society and the established priesthood. The rise of Aten worship fundamentally disrupted the traditional religious landscape by undermining the power of the powerful priesthood of Amun, who had long served as both spiritual and political leaders. The institutional shift provoked a backlash as the priests of Amun found their status and economic power diminished, resulting in increasing resentment and resistance among this group. This rising tension created a conflict that reverberated throughout the social fabric of Egypt, pitting entrenched religious authorities against the royal family's ambitions. Moreover, the stresses imposed by this religious shift extended to the general populace, who were forced to navigate the new lexicon of worship and adapt to Akhenaten's monotheistic practices. While some might have embraced the change, particularly those who found favour within the new order, many faced internal conflict regarding the suppression of their traditional beliefs. Family and community dynamics also shifted as individuals navigated their loyalties between the new order and the familiar practices of their ancestors. The societal upheaval fostered by Akhenaten's reforms created an environment ripe for resistance, characterized by a yearning for continuity and a return to the venerated ways of ancient worship that celebrated the pantheon of Egyptian deities. Following Akhenaten's death, the revolutionary changes he had orchestrated began to falter rapidly. His successors faced immense pressure to restore traditional practices and beliefs, as the populace increasingly rejected the disruption brought by the monotheistic reforms. Tutankhamun, ascending the throne at a young age, symbolized this transition. His reign marked a concerted effort to dismantle the vestiges of Akhenaten's religious order and re-establish worship of the traditional pantheon with Amun at the forefront. The restoration of traditional practices manifested in new building projects, including the renovation of temples dedicated to Amun, and a resurgence of the venerable rituals that had characterized Egyptian life for millennia. Egypt's spiritual landscape once again reflected the complex tapestry of its gods, allowing for pluralistic worship and a return to the familiar representation of deities. While Tutankhamun's reign was relatively short-lived, it signified a critical cultural reaction against Akhenaten's radical innovations, illustrating a powerful reactionary force underpinning the tenacity of ancient traditions. The legacy of Akhenaten's monotheism would soon be buried under the sands of time, with traditional practices resuming their place at the heart of Egyptian identity, governance, and spirituality. In conclusion, the Amarna period remains a fascinating chapter in Egyptian history, encapsulating the interplay of religion, politics, and society. Akhenaten's attempts to reshape the spiritual landscape through the worship of Aten alone were revolutionary, but ultimately unsustainable. The rise and fall of Akhenaten and his radical ideologies illustrate the enduring nature of ancient beliefs, showcasing a complex relationship between a pharaoh seeking to redefine divinity and a populace yearning for continuity in their spiritual lives. The remnants of this period serve as poignant reminders of the friction inherent in transformative changes, underscoring both the potential for innovation and the inextricable pull of tradition. The reign of Tutankhamun, often affectionately referred to as King Tut, occupies a notorious niche in the annals of ancient Egyptian history. Reigning during the 18th dynasty, circa 1332 to 1323 BCE, Tutankhamun ascended to the throne at the tender age of 9 after the death of his predecessor Akhenaten. Akhenaten was known for his radical shifts in religious practices, primarily promoting the worship of the Aten, a sun disk, while sidelining the traditional polytheistic beliefs that had long been upheld in Egyptian society. Under Tutankhamun's rule, a remarkable reversal began. The young pharaoh, influenced by advisors and perhaps even the lingering attachments to the more traditional forms of worship, restored the old religious customs and re-established the cults of the powerful deities such as Amun. This return to orthodoxy not only restored a sense of normalcy to the spiritual life of Egypt, but also realigned the political powers, allowing the priesthood of Amun to regain their formidable influence and wealth. However, the short reign of Tutankhamun, lasting just about 10 years, was shrouded in enigmas, including the circumstances surrounding his mysterious death. By the time he passed away at around 18 or 19 years of age, he had already initiated significant changes to Egypt's governance and its cultural milieu. The causes of his untimely death have fueled extensive speculation and debate among historians and archaeologists alike. Various theories have been proposed, ranging from illness and genetic disorders to potential foul play. Some modern examinations of Tutankhamun's mummified remains indicate signs of malarial infection and a possible clubfoot, raising questions about the young king's health during his brief reign. This absence of definitive evidence regarding his death has only deepened the intrigue surrounding his life. Tutankhamun goes down not only as a ruler who restored the old ways, but also as a historically compelling figure whose life ended all too soon, forever leaving questions about what might have been. The archaeological wonder of Tutankhamun's tomb, discovered by British archaeologist Howard Carter in 1922, unveiled layers of ancient history and treasures that spoke volumes about Egypt's grandeur. Marked by an unparalleled wealth of grave goods, the tomb, designated Cave 62, was unearthed in the Valley of the Kings, a site that houses the mausoleums of many prominent pharaohs. Inside, Carter found a trove of artifacts, including the resplendent golden funerary mask of Tutankhamun, intricate jewellery, chariots, and even a model of his tomb. The sheer opulence and craftsmanship of these items illuminated the sophistication of ancient Egyptian civilization and its elaborate funerary practices, which underscored the belief in an afterlife. The treasures were not merely items of luxury. They were emblematic of the young pharaoh's status as a divine figure and the cultural values of his time. Each artifact laden with symbolic meaning served a purpose, whether it was to accompany Tutankhamun in the afterlife or to signify his royal power and divine connection on earth. The unearthing of King Tut's tomb also ignited a fervour of curiosity and tales surrounding what has become known as the Curse of the Pharaohs. This notion emerged in the aftermath of the tomb's discovery, particularly following the reported deaths of several individuals associated with the expedition, including Lord Carnarvon, the financial backer who died just months after the tomb's opening. The idea that disturbing the final resting place of an ancient king could unleash supernatural reprisals captured the public's imagination and spawned a wave of sensationalism in the media. Scholars have since examined the curse's origins, suggesting that it was largely a concoction fueled by coincidence, tragic events, and the dramatic storytelling surrounding the tomb's discovery. While some have dismissed the curse as mere myth, it nonetheless has remained a captivating aspect of Tutankhamun's legacy. Today, it serves as a cultural touchstone, representing the enduring fascination with the pharaohs and the ancient mystical world they inhabited. The tales of the curse also lead us to reflect on the broader implications of archaeological work, including the respect and understanding required when engaging with the remains of past civilizations. In summary, the reign of Tutankhamun, though brief, left an indelible mark on Egyptian history. His revival of traditional belief stands in stark contrast to the revolutionary, albeit turbulent reign of Akhenaten, which had pushed Egypt away from its deep-rooted polytheism. Meanwhile, the excitement and discoveries surrounding his tomb affirmed the richness of ancient Egyptian culture and the mysterious aura that continues to envelop that epoch. Today, as we contemplate the treasures within Tutankhamun's burial site and the ongoing discussions surrounding the curse of the pharaohs, it is evident that King Tut's legacy transcends the boundaries of time, inviting generations to engage with and explore the mysteries of ancient Egypt. The late New Kingdom, commonly dated from the 19th to the early 20th dynasties of ancient Egypt, marked a transformative period in the history of one of the world's most fascinating civilizations. While the preceding eras showcased unprecedented developments in art, architecture, and military power, The late New Kingdom saw a gradual yet pronounced decline that ultimately resulted in a fragmentation of the Egyptian state and its influence. This decline was a multifaceted phenomenon stemming from internal conflicts, the rise of powerful priests, foreign invasions, and a diminishing hold over Near Eastern territories. Through a careful examination of these factors, we gain a deeper understanding of a civilization grappling with change and upheaval. Internal conflict in the late New Kingdom was marked by social, political, and economic challenges that eroded the sovereignty of the pharaohs. The central authority, which had once flourished under strong rulers like Ramses II, increasingly found itself contested. The wealth that had been amassed during the height of the empire created a fertile ground for rivalry among nobility and officials who vied for power and influence. Instead of bolstering the authority of the pharaoh, this competition fostered divisions within the elite, many of whom prioritized their own power over loyalty to the crown. The visible erosion of centralized authority prompted harsh social repercussions, including unrest among the lower classes, which led to a series of labor strikes and protests unheard of in previous epochs. As unrest grew, the state struggled to maintain control over vast territories inhabited by diverse populations. The compact bureaucratic structure that had defined earlier dynasties began to fragment, with individual provinces operating with a degree of autonomy that went unchecked. Rival factions formed, often aligning themselves with local leaders who could provide protection and resources. This decentralization further weakened the Egyptian state, allowing local potentates to accumulate military assets and solidify their authority. This culminated in a gradual dissolution of the monarchy's power, as the pharaoh increasingly relied on the support of local leaders instead of maintaining direct authority over regions. The land of Egypt, once defined by a strong and unified rule, began to experience a decline in resilience as territorial control became increasingly fragmented. A significant aspect of the decline of Egypt during the late New Kingdom was the emergence of religious leaders, particularly the powerful priests of Amun. Serving as both spiritual and political figures, the priests of Amun amassed significant wealth and influence in Thebes, rivaling the authority of the pharaohs themselves. The temple complex of Karnak became a center of power, and the economic resources controlled by the priesthood grew tremendously. Conflicts between the priests of Amun and the pharaohs resulted in a precarious balance of power. The priests were adept at utilizing their resources to leverage political support and swayed public sentiment in their favor, creating a schism within the governance of the state. Pharaohs frequently found themselves reliant on priestly support to maintain stability, leading to compromises that further undermined their traditional authority. Rituals and religious observances often overshadowed royal decrees, making the priest indispensable components of governance, yet potent challengers to centralized power. This duality culminated in a system where the lines separating religious authority and political power became increasingly blurred, facilitating a decline in the perceived divine right of pharaohs. As the priests rose, other socio-religious movements also gained traction, often promoting alternative belief systems and creating an atmosphere of dissent. Various sects challenged the prevailing religious orthodoxy, drawing followers disenchanted with the existing power structures. The growing prominence of the priestly class ultimately contributed to an environment where national unity was increasingly threatened, fracturing the social fabric of Egyptian society. Political allegiances shifted away from the crown, as both elite and popular loyalties became entangled with religious institutions and leaders, leading to the gradual overall decline of the pharaonic state. Another crucial factor contributing to the decline of Egypt in the late New Kingdom was the emergence of external threats, most notably the tumultuous invasions by the Sea Peoples and incursions from the Libyans. Historical records describe a catastrophic period marked by incursions that devastated Egyptian territories and tested its defences. The Sea Peoples, comprising various maritime groups and tribes, engaged in violent raids along the Mediterranean coast, significantly destabilizing Egypt's northern frontiers. Their naval capabilities allowed them to strike with unexpected speed, causing widespread panic and chaos. The response of the Egyptian military to these invasions revealed the weakening state of the pharaoh's military apparatus. Once renowned for its formidable armies and adept cavalry, the Egyptian military had begun to falter, plagued by a lack of resources and trained personnel. Previous pharaohs had cultivated military strength through extensive campaigns, Yet by the late New Kingdom, the resources required to sustain such endeavours were diminishing. The material and societal costs associated with constant warfare left the kingdom vulnerable and exposed to invasions that would have once been repelled successfully. In addition to the Sea Peoples, Libyan tribes began infiltrating Egypt's western borders, further exacerbating the climate of insecurity. These foreign elements capitalized on the internal disarray within the Egyptian state, seizing territory and resources while the military remained preoccupied with defending against multiple fronts. Over time, these incursions led to territorial loss, weakening Egypt's capacity both to govern its domain and to influence beyond its borders. The once grand empire that had dominated the region was becoming fragmented, beset by external threats that compounded its internal struggles. With increasing internal strife and external threats, Egypt's influence in the Near East, which had long been a pivotal aspect of its power, began to wane. The imperial reach that characterized earlier phases of Egyptian history diminished dramatically as neighboring states seized upon the chaos to assert their independence or engage in territorial expansion. For centuries, Egypt maintained dominance through a mix of military campaigns, diplomatic marriages, and economic ties with neighbouring lands ranging from Nubia to the Levant. However, as political stability eroded, neighbouring kingdoms such as the Hittites and Assyrians began encroaching into once Egyptian territories, diplomatically and militarily. Egyptian diplomacy, which had been both extensive and intricate, lost its former effectiveness during the late New Kingdom as rival powers capitalized on Egypt's disarray. The tributary states, once subservient to the pharaohs, often sought alliances with one another, creating a network of opposition against Egypt's declining power. The treaties and agreements forged during periods of strength became liabilities, as rival states failed to honor them, viewing Egypt as an ailing beast. The allure of power shifts drew attention away from the cultural capital of Egypt and toward burgeoning centers of influence like the Hittite Empire, which filled the power vacuum created by Egypt's decline. Moreover, the retreat of Egyptian authority resulted in a cultural shift within these regions. Local traditions and governance structures re-emerged, established by leaders who were quick to capitalize on Egypt's perceived weakness. This transition led to an erosion of the Heliopolitan standards of administration and art, averages increasingly local styles. The Levant, once characterized by Egyptian suzerainty, saw a renaissance of local kingdoms who rebuilt their identities and power bases independent of Egyptian influence. In this new political landscape, Egypt transformed from a formidable empire with significant cultural hegemony to a nation navigating the perils of isolation and decline. As the internal and external pressures mounted, the fabric of Egyptian unity began to unravel, ultimately leading to the division of the nation into two rival kingdoms, often referred to as the northern and southern kingdoms. This schism represented not just an administrative rift, but a profound socio-political fracture that challenged the very identity of Egypt as a coherent entity. The collapse of central authority facilitated the emergence of local dynastic rulers who laid claim to thrones once held by the pharaohs, enacting policies that catered primarily to their regional interests instead of a unified national agenda. The Northern Kingdom, anchored in the Nile Delta, became increasingly influenced by the remnants of external incursions and rival powers. Local warfare, alliances, and the competition for resources became the norm, displacing the once collaborative nature of governance in Egypt. The Southern Kingdom, centered in Thebes, countered by reaching out to past loyalties and tapping into an identity-centered approach. Unfortunately, neither kingdom possessed the resources or resolve needed to confront the external threats posed by the likes of the Libyans or the returning Sea Peoples, further weakening Egypt and paving the way for foreign domination. Eventually, this fragmentation would lead to further challenges in governance as both kingdoms experienced economic hardships, internal strife, and a lack of coherent leadership. Pharaohs became figureheads, dependent on local elites to maintain order and loyalty, which limited their capacity to unify and defend the realm against external aggressors. The socially entrenched divisions between the north and south eroded the once strong notion of Egyptian identity, as local allegiances began to supplant national interests. This culminated in a landscape where division was not just physical and political, but also cultural, signalling the end of the once unified grandeur of Egypt and heralding a protracted era of foreign influence and eventual subjugation. The late New Kingdom of Egypt was a transformative era that bore witness to the gradual decline of one of history's greatest civilizations. Internal conflicts, arising from power struggles, and the rise of influential religious factions chipped away at the pharaoh's authority, weakening the social and political fabric of the state. Concurrently, foreign invasions from the Sea Peoples and the encroachment of Libyan tribes shifted the balance of power, leading to territorial losses and diminished influence over the Near East. Ultimately, this upheaval precipitated the division of Egypt into competing northern and southern kingdoms, marking a profound transition that not only diminished Egypt's regional power, but also reshaped its identity. While the decline of Egypt in the late New Kingdom may have signaled the end of an era, it also provides a critical lens through which we can analyze broader themes of power, identity, and cultural resilience in the face of adversity. The factors contributing to this decline are not just historical footnotes, but insightful reflections on the vulnerabilities inherent in any civilization. As Egypt transitioned from a powerful empire to a fragmented territory, the lessons of its decline resonate through history, serving as timeless reminders of the delicate balance between authority and responsibility in the governance of a state. The third intermediate period of ancient Egypt, spanning from approximately 1070 BCE to 664 BCE, represents a tumultuous era marked by fragmentation, foreign dominion, and the relentless quest for stability. In the wake of the New Kingdom's decline, Egypt experienced a significant power vacuum that facilitated the rise of local rulers and the intrusion of foreign powers. The period was characterized by the establishment of various dynasties, notably the Libyan and Nubian pharaohs, who jostled for control over the region. This script aims to elaborate on the complexities of the Third Intermediate Period, exploring the fragmentation of Egypt and the ascendance of diverse local rulers, the influences exerted by Libyan and Nubian pharaohs, the revival of Egyptian authority under the 25th dynasty, the Assyrian invasion that culminated in the destruction of Thebes, and ultimately, Egypt's arduous struggle to regain stability. The decline of the New Kingdom paved the way for a significant transformation within Egypt, leading to a fragmentation of authority that had endured for centuries. This disintegration stemmed from various factors, including weakened central control, economic instability, and tribal invasions. As the once powerful pharaonic structure began to crumble, local rulers known as nomarchs gained prominence, establishing their own power bases in key regions. Unlike the central authority of the New Kingdom, these nomarchs acted autonomously, often competing with one another and reflecting the breakdown of unity that characterized this era. In essence, Egypt was divided into several regions ruled by powerful families or chieftains who sought to exert control over their local territories. Much of the governance involved localized agendas and individual political maneuvering. This regionalism gave rise to distinct identities, as local rulers emphasized loyalty to their territories over allegiance to a centralized authority. The fragmentation not only altered the power dynamics within Egypt, but it also opened the gates for external influences, as neighboring powers recognized Egypt's vulnerability and sought to capitalize on its weakened state. The once unified nation became characterized by disunity and strife, which inevitably dictated the course of its history during the Third Intermediate Period. With Egypt's internal fragmentation, outside forces began to exert their influence, particularly the Libyan tribes and Nubian rulers. The Libyans first entered Egyptian territory as mercenaries and traders, gradually becoming integrated into the fabric of Egyptian society. Over time, they established their own pharaonic dynasty, the 22nd dynasty, which ruled parts of Egypt from the 10th century BCE onward. During the 22nd dynasty, Libyan pharaohs adopted many Egyptian customs and traditions, while simultaneously imposing their own ideals, blending native Egyptian culture with their own. This period is marked by a facade of stability, characterized by significant building projects and the continued use of Egyptian religious symbolism. However, Libyan rule also sowed seeds of discontent, as the indigenous Egyptian population often resented the foreign rulers. Local rivalries flared, exacerbated by the presence of Nubian forces to the south. The Nubians, seeking to solidify their power, launched incursions into Egypt, eventually establishing control over parts of the land. Under the 25th dynasty, notably led by the Kushite pharaohs, The Nubians claimed legitimacy by positioning themselves as restorers of traditional Egyptian values and customs, while also emphasizing a unifying ideology. The Nubians, who held deep reverence for the cultural heritage of Egypt, sought to bring a semblance of coherence to the fragmented land. Their administration brought about a renaissance of art, culture, and religious practices, asserting their influence as guardians of the ancient civilization even amidst the challenges posed by their predecessors. The 25th dynasty, often referred to as the Kushite dynasty, marked a pivotal revival in Egyptian history during the Third Intermediate Period. Spearheaded by rulers from Kush, particularly Pharaoh Pius, this dynasty aimed to reunify Egypt under the banner of traditional pharaonic authority. Pius's remarkable campaign against the fragmented Middle Kingdom states involved military prowess as well as shrewd diplomacy. After a successful invasion, he was recognized as the legitimate ruler of all of Egypt, reinstating the traditional practices associated with the earlier dynasties. The Kushite pharaohs were critical in reviving the art, architecture, and cultural practices that illuminated Egypt's past. They constructed magnificent pyramids, reminiscent of the Old and Middle Kingdom styles, and revitalized temple complexes such as those at Karnak and Luxor. Moreover, they reintroduced ancient religious practices that fostered a renewed sense of national identity. By revering traditions of the past, the Kushites sought not only to legitimize their rule, but also to heal the wounds inflicted by foreign dominations. This renaissance under the 25th dynasty, however, was not solely based on military conquests. It was characterized by an aspirational vision of unity, urging Egyptians to embrace their heritage amid ongoing strife. Nevertheless, the flourishing of the 25th dynasty was fleeting. The Kushite rule, while initially successful in restoring some degree of stability, also faced challenges from competing powers. The increasing instability and hostility from neighboring entities, coupled with internal dissensions, posed continual threats to the authority of the Kushite rulers. Their ambitious efforts, though significant, foreshadowed the impending challenges the dynasty would encounter, ultimately culminating in the tumultuous events that would define the latter part of the Third Intermediate Period. The Assyrian invasion represented one of the most catastrophic events in the history of the Third Intermediate Period, altering the trajectory of Egyptian civilization. As the Kushite rulers sought to secure their position and re-establish unity, they found themselves facing a formidable adversary in the powerful Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians, known for their military might and strategic prowess, launched campaigns across the region in pursuit of territorial expansion. By the late 7th century BCE, they had set their sights on Egypt, seeing its internal strife as an opportunity to exert dominance over the traditionally influential Nile Valley. In 664 BCE, the Assyrians made a concerted push into Egypt, resulting in the sacking of Thebes, the once magnificent capital that had stood as a testament to millennia of Egyptian civilization. The brutal campaign led to widespread destruction, with temples pillaged and monuments desecrated. The cultural and political significance of Thebes made it a prime target, and its fall symbolized a broader decline of Egyptian power in the ancient world. This invasion effectively dismantled the administrative frameworks established by the Kushite dynasty, leading to further fragmentation and turmoil within Egypt. The aftermath of the Assyrian invasion catalyzed a chain reaction of instability across the region. As local rulers vied for power, the absence of a strong central authority exacerbated infighting among competing factions. The loss of Thebes also had profound implications for the religious and cultural identity of the Egyptian populace, who revered the city as a sacred site. Consequently, the Assyrian invasion not only marked a direct blow to the physical and political landscape of Egypt, but also represented a psychological fracture, leaving Egyptian society grappling with issues of legitimacy, sovereignty, and cultural preservation. The struggle for stability in Egypt during the later stages of the Third Intermediate Period showcased the intricate interplay of local authority and foreign intervention. After the Assyrian occupation and subsequent withdrawal, Egypt found itself politically fragmented and economically strained. The competing powers that had arisen in the power vacuum, combined with the residual influence of foreign rulers, further complicated the quest for national unity. Local dynasties rose and fell, each vying to establish itself as the legitimate successor to the once unified pharaonic lineage, all the while struggling against external threats and the scars of recent conflicts. Amid this chaos, restoration efforts were periodically attempted by emerging local leaders who sought to reinstate a centralized authority reminiscent of the Old and Middle Kingdom glory. Despite these efforts, the region continued to be marred by civil strife, tribal skirmishes, and incursions from foreign entities such as the Nubians and later the Persians. Even as the Egyptian populace yearned for solidarity and revitalization, the ingrained divisions and allegiances to local spheres of influence made significant unification a daunting challenge. Cultural identities remained deeply fragmented, and the Egyptian state struggled to rebalance its cultural and political landscape. Ultimately, the endurance of Egypt during this period is a testament to the resilience of its people. Although the Third Intermediate Period is often regarded as an era marked by decline, it was also a period of cultural synthesis and adaptation. The interactions between indigenous rulers and foreign powers cultivated a unique political landscape, leading to the eventual emergence of new dynasties and the eventual resurgence of Egyptian civilization. Though the struggle for stability during this tumultuous time was fraught with challenges, it also set the stage for the rich tapestry of histories that would follow in centuries to come, shaping the identity of Egypt in critical and profound ways. The Third Intermediate Period of ancient Egypt is a complex narrative of fragmentation, foreign intervention, and evolving authority. As local rulers gained prominence amidst the disintegration of central control, foreign influences from Libya and Nubia introduced new dynamics to Egyptian society. The Kushite revival under the 25th dynasty illuminated Egypt's rich historical legacy, reflecting the adaptability and resilience of its culture and traditions. However, the subsequent Assyrian invasion and the destruction of Thebes posed substantial challenges to the nation's integrity, leading to a protracted struggle for stability among competing factions. Despite these adversities, the Third Intermediate Period ultimately laid the groundwork for future regeneration and cultural renaissance, demonstrating Egypt's enduring spirit in the face of adversity. The late period of ancient Egypt, spanning from approximately 664 BC to 332 BC, represents a fascinating chapter in the history of one of the world's oldest civilizations. Characterized by a complex interplay of revival, reassertion of control, and eventual decline, this era witnessed the last native Egyptian pharaohs, the brief independence under Egyptian rulers, and increasing external pressures from powerful empires. Among the most critical developments during this time were the struggles for national sovereignty, exemplified by the rise of pharaohs such as Nectanebo II, and the inevitably encroaching threat of foreign domination that culminated in Egypt's conquest by Alexander the Great. Each of these themes illustrates a nuanced tapestry of resilience and vulnerability that defined the trajectory of Egypt during its late period. After centuries of foreign rule, notably during the Assyrian conquest, the late period began with a reinvigoration of indigenous governance. The 26th dynasty, or the Sate dynasty, rose as a prominent power in this context, heralded by the ascension of Psamtik-Thutmose circa 664 to 610 BC. This period is often viewed as a renaissance of Egyptian culture, and a time when native Egyptian leaders sought to reconnect with their ancient traditions, while simultaneously adopting new influences and technologies gained from their interactions with foreign powers. This was marked by a resurgence in art, literature, and religion, where the glorification of past rulers and the re-establishment of temples played pivotal roles in consolidating power and cultural identity. Moreover, this era facilitated a certain degree of internal stability and independence, which lay the foundation for advancing agricultural and economic practices. Farmers benefited from revived irrigation projects that had fallen into disrepair, allowing for improved harvests and a degree of food security amid external threats. Trade networks were also rejuvenated, linking Egypt with neighbouring regions and enabling the influx of goods and ideas. However, this independence was tenuous at best. The seeds of external aggression loomed on the horizon. The native rulers sought to fortify their borders and consolidate power while aspiring to revive Egypt's former glory. Yet the spectre of foreign conquest was never far removed from the Egyptian consciousness during this period. As the 26th dynasty attempted to navigate a course of renewed independence, the power dynamics in the surrounding regions became increasingly precarious. The Persian Empire, under the Achaemenid dynasty, was rapidly expanding and turning its gaze toward Egypt, driven by a desire to incorporate the rich and strategically located territory of the Nile Valley into its vast dominion. During the reign of Cambyses II, 530 to 522 BC, the Persians invaded Egypt with devastating efficiency, effectively ending the period of independence established by the native rulers. The conquest introduced a dual administration. Egyptian officials were retained to manage local affairs, while ultimately serving under their Persian overlords. This colonization brought about significant changes in the socio-political landscape of Egypt. The Persians established a system of satrapies or provinces, which allowed them to exploit Egypt's wealth while maintaining control through local governance. However, this approach bred resentment among the Egyptian populace, as the cultural and religious foundations of Egyptian identity faced threats under foreign rule. The desire for sovereignty continued to simmer beneath the surface, leading to a series of uprisings that punctuated the Persian occupation. As the tensions between the Egyptians and their Persian rulers escalated, the native spirit, though suppressed, found avenues to manifest, fueling the Egyptian desire for reclamation of their nation from foreign control. The conquest by the Persians marked a turning point in Egypt's trajectory, as the once proud civilization became a part of the expansive Achaemenid Empire. Despite the political setbacks, aspects of Egyptian identity survived within the structure imposed by the Persian authorities. Persian rulers, particularly Darius I and Xerxes I, recognized the importance of religious and cultural sensitivity, allowing the local priesthood to remain influential in the administration of temples. This strategic choice was meant to placate the populace and minimize resistance. However, it also created an ambiguous space where elements of Egyptian culture coexisted within a foreign imperial framework. During this period, monumental constructions and artistic expressions continued, albeit with a notable shift in style that blended Egyptian traditions with Persian influences. The practice of funerary traditions and the veneration of deities persisted, reflecting an enduring commitment to ancient customs despite subjugation.